To think that a commercial that was done 40 years ago, feel-good commercial, still is being requested, and it's just two cats playing underneath a tree. But it sort of represents what's special about this time of year.
These two little stars have been making people smile since 1980. Bangor Savings Bank President and CEO Robert Montgomery Rice says, if anything, they've gotten even more popular.
I used to think that at some point people who originally saw it, then maybe we won't be asking for anyone, but we have young people asking now. So I think the commercial is timeless.
I remember the commercial from when I was a little girl. I was 7 years old when the commercial first aired, and it was the background to Christmas.
Isla Dickerson says these two Maine Coon kittens are a Christmas tradition for her family. They even have their own Maine Coon kitten named Muffin.
I also wondered if there was anything we could ever do that would top the kitten commercial. And I'm now certain that there's not, but there are lots of ways that we can still use it to bring joy to everyone, which is what this year's celebration is about.
Like with hilariously adorable memes, a campaign to give back to animal shelters in Maine and New Hampshire, and a making of videos, including testimonials from people near and dear to the commercial, like Philip Cormier.
I think it's a heartwarming piece. It just shows, it gives everyone a warm feeling, and that's what the bank wanted to convey, and they've done it very well through the years.
And the night show host, Danny Cashman, who shot a parody of it a few years back.
I think this commercial has sort of locally inserted itself into that timeless holiday warm memories kind of feeling, and I don't think it will ever go away for that reason.
If a commercial of two cats playing on a tree can make people's day, then that's just an amazing kind of thing, and it's special.
Morgan Sturdivant, WABI TV5 News, Bangor.